It is now my great privilege to introduce the president of Johns Hopkins University, Ron Daniels. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It is truly terrific to be here and to celebrate this really important moment as we announce this fellowship. Let me just start, Ambassador, what truly stirring words. And I can't think of a better representative for the United States and India, just given your long career in public service and the extent to which your belief in youth and the possibilities of youth and your belief in democracy and equality, these foundational values which are so deeply rooted in our country, but to bring them to a country that is just brimming with youth and possibility, I can't think of a better way to connect our two countries up. So thank you for your really stirring remarks this morning. It is really great to be here today to celebrate, as I said a moment ago, the GKII Women in STEM Fellowship. As America's first research university, Johns Hopkins was founded to advance innovation and discovery, and we've been proud, as the ambassador indicated a moment ago, to be a partner in India for a very long time, indeed almost a century, engaging in a broad and robust exchange of expertise and ideas that has sparked extraordinary progress in STEM fields as far-reaching as public health, agriculture, energy, and healthcare. And here in India, as the ambassador indicated, women in STEM fields have made their marks profoundly in similarly far-reaching fields. Indian women have mapped oceans in Antarctica, operated robotic arms in space, pioneered life-giving fertility treatments, and led the development of technologies for national defense, and dealt with a host of diseases and health conditions like malaria and cancer. But still, as was indicated in the ambassador's remarks, there is more to be done in terms of achieving the full possibilities of parity of opportunity in India and indeed in the United States. So currently, according to a recent UNESCO report, about 43% of India's STEM graduates are women, a figure that surpasses even the most developed countries, including the United States. There is profound potential in that number. Still, as indicated, again in the ambassador's remarks, women only constitute 17% of India's research workforce, falling short of a global benchmark of 30%. And this is the so-called leaky pipeline, and it deprives STEM fields, indeed India, of trained workers with innovative ideas and crucial perspectives. It limits the professional flourishing of half of the population and relegates to the realm of unrealized possibility the achievements that might have been contributed to the nation and the world. The longstanding problem of underrepresentation of women in STEM fields is far from unique, and it's not just limited to India. In the United States, only 21% of engineering majors and 19% of computer science majors are women, and fewer half of those women will go on to be employed in their fields of study. And what's amazing, as someone who has been involved in leadership and higher education for decades, is that there is so much ink, there is so much data, there is so much recurrent focus on this issue, and yet the progress has been glacial in really redressing what is such a striking problem and a loss of possibility. Now, here I will say that this is something that we have been worried about, not just at the level of the sector, but very specifically at Johns Hopkins. And I'm looking to see if our Dean of Engineering has made it back, has made it to India. He just arrived a few moments ago. But Ed Schlesinger, stand up for a moment because I just want to brag on you. Okay, Ed Schlesinger is the Dean of the Whiting School of Engineering. He's deserving of general applause, whatever room that he walks into. But this event, this moment is particularly salient because when Ed came to Hopkins more than a decade ago, the challenge that we issued, Ed, was you got to do something about getting to parity in terms of the starting class of the Whiting School of Engineering. This idea, my background is in law. When I went to law school, half of the class many decades ago was already consisted of women, and in fact, over the years, the percentage of women have exceeded 50% in law for a number of those years. But that wasn't true in engineering and ed. When you started, the percentage of women in the first year class was 20%. So one of the great moments that we had at Johns Hopkins was 2 years ago when Ed stood before the Board of Trustees at the start of the academic year and announced that indeed women were now 50% of the starting class at the Whiting School of Engineering. And indeed, now, Ed, women are starting to climb above the 50%. And so we can see that once you open up these opportunities and encourage these pipelines, the rest takes care of itself. So it is with real optimism and a sense of possibility that we stand side along our partners at GKII and the U.S. State Department to celebrate the launch of this fellowship. Its comprehensive approach to address the barriers that too frequently cause the leaks in the pipeline to the completion of STEM degrees and professional success and scientific innovation for early career women scientists. With technical research training and leadership development, group and peer mentorship, career advancement resources, and experiential learning opportunities, we aspire to broaden pathways for Indian women scientists to establish and pursue excellence in their STEM research careers. Whether in India, the United States, or anywhere in the world, we simply cannot afford to leave half the population's talent untapped. And so we're excited to play a small part in empowering women to bring their voices, their expertise, their professional leadership to the challenges we face as a global community and to a research and development ecosystem in India poised to advance global innovation. As I said before, there's a lot of ink, there's a lot of analysis, there's a lot of rumination on this problem, but there's been far too little progress. Today is a really hopeful moment where we see an innovation and a set of activities that are really commensurate with the challenges and the opportunity before us. And it really seems to me to spark a moment where we'll finally see the kind of changes that we've long awaited. And we're really proud to be able to play a role with that. So with that, I'd like to invite Richa back to the podium to introduce our panel to discuss how, in more concrete terms, we bring the vision animating this fellowship into concrete reality. Again, thanks so much for the opportunity to be here and be part of this program.
All right, so we've been inspired, we've got the statistics, now let's turn to the experts. I am very happy to welcome Dr. Anita Shet, the faculty lead for Women in STEM at Johns Hopkins University, and Dr. Kamini Walia, the senior secretary for the senior scientist at the Indian Council of Medical Research. They are going to get into the details about how we make this happen. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Welcome to this session. I'm really delighted and honored to have with us to share the stage today with my dear friend and woman of science, Dr. Kamini Walia. She is the Senior Scientist and Program Officer of Antimicrobial Resistance and head of the Division of Descriptive Research at the Indian Council of Medical Research. We met almost 2 decades ago, I think, and over the years we've shared research interests, stories about our careers and families. And we also share in common Johns Hopkins. Dr. Walia is a distinguished alumna of the Bloomberg School of Public Health, having received her MPH degree in 2005. And since then, she went on to get her PhD at a premier institution in India, the PGI Chandigarh, and has contributed immensely in public health and infectious diseases, in HIV/AIDS, and particularly in antimicrobial resistance. She's been passionate about AMR, and in her years as a leader in this area in India, she has brought about a paradigm shift in antimicrobial. So we're really fortunate to have this conversation today with Dr. Walia on the evolving landscape of women in STEM areas. And we heard a lot of the statistics, but let's take a look at some deeper issues that are real today. So we can begin by having you tell us a little bit about your journey. What was interesting about science that drew you in? What were the experiences or influences that made you interested in science?
Thank you, Anita, and good morning to all the friends and colleagues in the audience. Thanks for inviting me to this very interesting topic. And regarding my introduction to science, like many beautiful things happen in childhood, so my exposure to science also happened during my school years, high school. Very motivated and very inspiring teacher I had during those years, and she first actually introduced us to the curiosity of science, the asking questions, and also helped us pushing limits. So that was something which I always remember very fondly. As we heard the statistics, there are very few women in science, and because of that, there are also very few women teachers who are actually teaching science or teaching mathematics at all levels of our education. But I would say that was just the beginning. Series of things, one after the other events, they actually continued to amaze me and also inspire me. And that's what led to the scientist that I am today, I would say. One thing which was always very endearing about being part of the science or associating myself with science was always the curiosity and also the knowledge that it brought. It brought a lot of objectivity to the way I started thinking as a person, and also there was always something more to find out, and that's what I think has been inspiring me till now that I lead one of the antimicrobial resistance programs at Indian Council of Medical Research. There are always more questions to be answered than what you have done.
Absolutely. What a journey. And in every journey there are roadblocks. And we heard about the leaky pipeline metaphor for women in STEM. And this refers to a linear approach, but there's also a way of looking at it from a more organizational structure. So one can think of it as a game of chutes and ladders, or snakes and ladders, where there are events or experiences and factors in the environment that can result in assisting a woman in her career or causing disruption in her career. So in your journey, what were some of the challenges that you had come across, and how were you able to navigate those challenges?
As I always say, being a young mother and being a professional is never easy. It is a very tightrope walk, and maintaining that balance is always a challenge. So two instances I would like to share here. One was when I was doing my PhD. I was midway through and my parents, like all families, they wanted me to get married. And that is something, so this all comes from the social structure that we have and the kind of prejudices that the society has, that there is a certain age then, when most of the women, I think, when I meet them, they are young professionals, they want to achieve so much in life, but the biological clock is ticking and the parents want you to settle down for all the right or wrong reasons. And that's the challenge I think all young professionals and young women face. that was one, and fortunately, the families were supportive, and I was able to finish what I had started. I finished my PhD, but I can also tell you that many of my female colleagues who were in the same situation, they had to leave in between. They were not able to finish their projects or their dissertation, and they were kind of forced to leave it in between. And the second was when I got admission at Hopkins. I was a young mother by then. My son was 6 years old, and it was a choice between, I would not have been able to travel by myself, so it was a choice that either we both go together or none of us goes. And MPH at Hopkins was something that I had always wanted to do. So both of us went together, and I finished my degree, and I'm here today, a very proud Hopkins alumni. But I would like to mention here that the systems in US or in Hopkins, they supported me as a young mother to complete what I wanted to do. And that is something that many institutions or many countries may not support. So the systems in US were conducive to young mothers to continue to study and at the same time take care of their responsibilities. So these are some of the challenges which I would say. Rest is all day-to-day, the stuff in office that I will not really go into, because once you take care of the bigger things, the smaller things get taken care of.
That is so true. Just before the session, you were showing me a picture, a cartoon really, of men and women on a racetrack. And the track for the men, pretty clear, but for the women, there are these hurdles, whether it's marriage or children, taking care of. Exactly. So lots of different things, but also challenges that are, harder to overcome. It could be the non-supportive structure, the social norms around. But I know there are many instances where you were able to stand up to these challenges. And it reminds me of this quote from one of my favorite poets, Maya Angelou, who said that each time a woman stands up for herself, without knowing it, possibly without claiming it, she stands up for all women. And in a way, people can look up to you and hold you as an example and a role model, and that is important. Even the fact that we're having this conversation is critical. You also mentioned many mentors, and that is something that is also very critical, crucial in any field. And a recent report from Deloitte I read talked about how women attribute their career success. 70% of women actually attribute them to having mentors. And also the other intriguing thing is that the benefit is mutual, so it benefits the mentor as well as the mentee. But in your journey, who have been your significant mentors who have shaped your career and supported your career?
Well, many of them, I think. The professional that we become, or the personal, the growth at the personal level that happens, that we are fortunate when it is guided by professionals who are experienced in that field. And I was fortunate to have many such mentors. Professor Ganguly, who I did my PhD with, and he's a well-known figure in public health. I was very fortunate to have joined him as a PhD student, and he was someone who had maximum number of female students, and he was very sensitive to all the situations that young girls go through. As I just mentioned, the pressure to get married, the pressure to have to start family. So he was very sensitive to it, and I would say 80 to 90% of his PhD students were women. Then few others to name, of course, Professor Bollinger, who I did my capstone project with. He was my mentor at Hopkins. He again was someone who, in spite of being American, as Ambassador mentioned, he knew a lot about India, the Indian situations. And I saw him mentoring most of the Indian students who went to Hopkins for MPH. Mentoring, I think, is taking a lot of responsibility. It is not just advising for a particular project. It is providing a lifetime of commitment that I will handhold you and I will provide advice to you from time to time. And many a times it also is a fine balance of providing advice, at the same time giving you a lot of opportunity to grow and achieve your full potential as a professional. And I think from that perspective, all these men who have been my mentors and who actually believed that women can lead and women can have the potential to grow, I think I owe a lot to them. But professional side is only one side of mentorship. I think the commitment of the family towards how much freedom to give to the girls when they make choices regarding their education, when they make their choices regarding education is important. So I think it is a fine balance of the mentorship as well as the freedom to think for yourself and go after and take that leap which you want to take. That is important. And if you have someone to have that faith in you, it is a great opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. And you mentioned Dr. Bob Bollinger, who would have been here in the audience, but he's mentored many people. And my own mentor, Dr. Mathuram Santosham, is here in the audience as well, who's mentored so many hundreds of people, particularly women. And we owe a lot to all of these mentors. And in terms of bringing women up to the leadership roles, that is the critical aspect, right? Because we know now, science has shown us that women leaders actually increase productivity, enhance collaboration, and improve fairness. This was based on a meta-analysis by Professor Alice Eagley from Northwestern University, who showed that there is this transformational style of leadership that women bring to the table that's different. So in terms of, and you've been a leader in so many ways, what do you think would be the factors that promote the leadership in women, and how do you think, what advice would you give young women who are aiming for these top roles? Possibly structural changes or policy changes as well. What do you think?
Yeah, when women are trying to pursue a profession, it is a very challenging times for them because there are competing commitments at home, at work, and we have very few women who really talk about it. Most of women, out of all those women, I think I remember most vividly Indira Nooyi talking about how she had to face, like when she was at the pinnacle of her career, there were ailing parents who had to be taken care of. There are demands from the children. So I think we need more such stories to be going out, that when you see women at the top, they don't have everything in control. There are things that they are struggling with. There are things that
those hurdles are still there.
Those hurdles, the laundry machines and all those things in the cartoons, they are still there to be taken care of, and probably or rather bigger issues. If you have a sick patient, a sick parent who needs care, I mean, that is something that you have to manage. And most of the time it is the women who are managing these roles. And in COVID times also we saw that how there was so much burden on women when there was lockdowns and other such situations at home. So I think we need more such stories to be talked about, more female leaders to talk about their struggles and their challenges and their achievements in spite of those struggles. In India, we have quite a few women leaders. I'm talking about the leaders from engineering field here. So there is a leader who, the name is Nigar Shaji. She leads the solar mission in India. Then we have Gagandeep Kang. I'm sure most of you know about her. And she led the rotavirus vaccine program, significant contributions there. But how many times do we really talk about them, or we try to understand what struggles and challenges? So when we make these leaders a little more human, a little more, we see them, someone who's from amongst us, then we will be able to relate to them more, and our own struggles will not sound very challenging and unsurmountable. I think those are some of the things that we should be concentrating more. And at the policy level, or at because most of our institutions are led by our male colleagues. So they have to make space for these women leaders. They have to outsize their role and bring more women leaders on the leadership positions and create more space for them. And there are many, I would say, male colleagues who I work with. They are very sensitive to the fact, the gender balance on the panels, the gender balance in the institution. So I think this change is now really coming around.
Yes, and we can feel that excitement from the speech by Ambassador Garcetti and our President Ron Daniels. So it's true that there are more initiatives now. There's partnerships happening between academia, industry, governments that's providing these opportunities. And many of the points that you brought up are so critical, all the social norms and the support that's needed from all around, and these opportunities. And we from Johns Hopkins, we're really happy to be able to contribute in a small but meaningful way through this Women in STEM Fellowship Program. This is a joint program from the U.S. Department of State and the Gupta-Klinsky India Institute at Johns Hopkins. And we're very excited about this program, this fellowship program. The emphasis here is on early career women in science at the Indian institutions that are working towards their career and are progressing along that. It shows that you care about this concept, and thank you for your time and energy as well. And I'd like to call upon some of our potential partners who have made commitments to this fellowship. I call upon Mr. Atul Grover, Managing Director of the India and South Asia for Becton, Dickinson and Company, to say maybe just 1 minute about your commitment, since we have a time constraint.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Atul Grover. I represent Becton Dickinson. I think I saw the audience. So a lot of you are researchers, and some of you have worked. So you may have been used to Becton Dickinson. Johns Hopkins is also a global partner for us. So when this opportunity came in, I think Ambassador talked about values and morals, right? So this is we have been working on this as a company in India for the last 30, 35 years. Like, we have a manufacturing plant. We have actually special policies for women working in the plant on the shop floor. So this is not managerial. So we have been doing all of these things in the manufacturing plant, functions, sales, commercial roles. And of course, we have a technology center, what we call it an R&D center in Bangalore. There are around 500 engineers there. And I think that's where we will be very interested in supporting and kind of partnering with this fellowship. So BD's commitment, Becton Dickinson's commitment will remain, not only for this fellowship, but beyond that, any other partnership that will be required which can encourage this. So thank you, and wishing all the best to this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grover. I'd also like to call upon Mr. Vineet Gupta, who is the head of government affairs at Siemens Healthineers, to say another minute for your commitment.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Doctor, so much. Well, yes, Siemens Healthineers in India is almost, I would say presence is almost about 70 plus years in India. And we consider ourselves more as an Indian company rather than an MNC from Germany. But yes, we are in the space of manufacturing high-end medical technology equipment in the country. We have the manufacturing facilities in the city of Bangalore and also in Baroda in Gujarat. We have a large footprint in terms of an R&D center, the development center, which we call in Bangalore only. It is one of the 4 innovation hubs around the globe for Siemens Healthineers. And we have a presence of almost 4,000 engineers in this, where we not only develop the softwares for the equipment which we manufacture, but also partner with clinical and research agencies, both in the government as well as the private sector, for developing new technologies. Recently the Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, inaugurated one of our technology, which we have collaborated with AIIMS New Delhi. We have established an MRI, which is a zero point 0.5 Tesla MRI for the rural sector, where the challenge of having these kind of technologies is huge. So those kind of developments are taking place, and India definitely is one of the cornerstone of our strategy at Siemens Healthineers. And as commitment to this fellowship, Women in STEM Fellowship, I think the development center is a place where we see a lot of kind of engagement with this kind of a fellowship and partnership, and we certainly look forward to have more engagement with the Alliance for Women's Economic Empowerment. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Gupta. So like we talked about, so these partnerships are critical, and as Dr. Kamini Walia has also mentioned, having a completely supportive environment from academia, from the government, from industry is also really critical. So I'd like to take a moment and say thank you to all of you for being part of this process. Thanks to the organizers of this event, and my special gratitude to Dr. Kamini Walia for sharing these insights and telling us about her own experience. And we hope to continue this partnership very deeply and take this forward. And finally, I'd like to call upon Mr. Raj Gupta to give the vote of thanks for this event. As all of you know, Mr. Gupta and his wife, Mrs. Kamala Gupta, are the co-founders of the Gupta-Klinsky India Institute and very strong supporters of the Women in STEM program. So thank you, Mr. Gupta.
I believe it's still morning, so good morning, everyone. Well, I was so touched and impressed with the comments made this morning and the conversation that we just had. I had a little text here about thanking everybody, but if you wouldn't mind, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to talk in 2 minutes about my personal journey, what led us to set up the foundation, Ujala, and how Steve Klinsky got involved in funding this institute. So I grew up in UP, was born in Muzaffarnagar. My father was a civil engineer. I was very fortunate to go to IIT Bombay in mechanical engineering. And IIT Bombay and Cornell had a very interesting relationship. There was a professor there at IIT Bombay who liked the students from IIT, and he gave for 10 years scholarship to number 1, 2, and 3 to come to Cornell and do their either master's or PhD in operations research and computer science. And that's what opened the door for me. More important, my parents, I was 22 years old, my parents said, "You're only going to America if you get married," which was some of the things we talk about, social things. It wasn't just limited to women, it applied to men as well. So I think the first time I told my mother and father, find somebody, I'm leaving next month. So the first time I met my wife, Kamala, was I put a ring, and the second time was our wedding day. And of course, she joined me 6 months later, and we've been together for 56 years now. So that's a personal journey. I was also very fortunate. We talked about the role of the mentors. And nobody in my family was a business person. They were basically services engineers, mostly. So when I finished my master's in computer science, I worked with a company called Scott Paper. Many of you who lived in the US know Scott towels and tissues, but they did not have anything in India. My parents were alive. They wanted me to come back to India. I finished my MBA at Drexel, and that I thought was a ticket to come back to India. So I joined a company called Roman Haas, which made plexiglass with their brand name among many research, one of the leading specialty materials company in the United States. And what a journey it was. 39 years in 3 continents. We lived in Paris, London, Asia, and US, and finished last 10 years as chairman CEO, when the company was sold in 1993. So that was a personal journey. Even during that time, and of course, our daughters, Anita and Vineet, grew up all over the world. But the most important thing was the family was 35% owned by a very generous family, Haas. And most of it was in the trust. So out of the $20 billion the company was sold for cash, $6 billion of that went to that trust all for charitable purposes. They are still one of the most charitable companies for families in the area of Philadelphia. And I think that sort of led me to believe that I've been very fortunate. The role the mentors played in my own success was amazing, and I owed a lot to the families. So after I finished, I thought maybe it's time for me to think about how to give back of all the benefits that we've had. And we set up this foundation, Ujala, in 2009, literally a few months upon retirement. Another interesting thing happened. So we said two things. One is this charity is going to be equally divided between India and United States, and with focus in two areas, education and healthcare. Because at the end of the day, those are the two most important sustainable things that make a difference and elevate anybody, doesn't matter what their background or starting position is, to something which is worthwhile. And that's what we have done. So over the last 14 years now, we have contributed almost $30 million. And most of it, a good half of it, has gone indirectly or directly to Johns Hopkins, and I'll tell you why. And I think the philosophy for us has been that we don't have a big bureaucracy. I'm the sole director. Yes, I get advice from my wife and my daughters about where to contribute, but the philosophy has been contributing to organizations and people who we really believe in, rather than have big bureaucracy, filling forms, asking for this, asking for that. That's been the philosophy, and God willing, it's really worked out very well so far. So we have funded Gupta Governance Institute at Drexel University, because I'm a big believer in good governance. Since I was an alum of Cornell, there's a fellowship in biomedical engineering in the name of my parents. And of course, as I mentioned, in addition to, for India, we thought the best vehicle for us would be an institution that is well established, and we have the contact, and we trust that they will put the best use of that fund. And our daughter, Anita, who's now head of infectious diseases division, has been working in India for 20 years. That, plus the recognition of Hopkins, led us to contributing towards Hopkins over time. And really, I'm very thankful and for how they have deployed that capital and the progress that we have made as Hopkins India Institute. One other thing I'll tell you is, you need to see the name Steve Klinsky. So Klinsky is the founder of a private equity firm in New York. I've worked with him since my retirement in 2009. He has never been to India. So when I was kind of winding down with them about four years ago, he said, Raj, what are you going to do next? So I mentioned this was our ambition. And it took him less than 5 seconds to say, I will do whatever you're putting in. This is literally, the building of trust of saying is, I will support you. And he is still very involved, he and his wife Maureen. They spend the time, they continue to contribute. And Ron, you have met him as well in person. Wonderful people. But I think, talk about relationships, mentoring, and people who make a difference has just been somewhat phenomenal experience for me. So I would say again, now when I come back to what I was assigned to do here today, and Ambassador Grachetti, you may not remember, we met, but Vanita and I were at the event for Prime Minister Modi's visit to White House. So first I'd like to thank very much Ambassador Grachetti and President Daniels for their inspiring remarks and importance of U.S. India relationship and empowering women in the STEM. Their forthright support for Women in STEM Fellowship really highlights the global importance and the gender equality in STEM. There is no question about it. The opportunity is huge, and if it's not tapped, I think we are losing something as a civilization. I also want to thank Dr. Kamini Walia for her expertise and contribution to the panel, and particularly in addressing barriers and opportunities for women in research. Her work at the Indian Council of Medical Research and her dedication to public health and antimicrobial resistance research have added tremendously to the depth of the discussion, for sure. And I was fascinated by hearing the name of Dr. Bob Bollinger, who is the very first person I met when Anita joined Johns Hopkins, and we still stay in touch. What a wonderful man he is with over 40 years of working in India. It's remarkable. Special thanks to Dr. Anita Shet for expertly moderating today's session and really guiding the decision and bringing other valuable insights from the distinguished panelists. Her expertise and dedication in advancing public health have greatly enriched our conversation and kept really a significant and engaging impact. I would also like to extend, and we heard from two of the companies here, a really heartfelt appreciation for the new partnership with Becton Dickinson and Siemens Health for their generous commitment to support the fellowship program. Because industrial collaboration with the STEM programs to get practical experience is going to be such an important element of it. And finally, I want to thank the media for helping us, an important initiative in covering our efforts here. And I should never leave from here without thanking my dear wife for 56 years. Really appreciate it.